Many years ago, I had a dream about opening a club which would only open its doors between the months of October and April. A warm, welcoming place with roaring log fires and cozy nooks where you could sit with your friends and chat about things that interest you. Well, I couldn't even begin to afford to open a club, so the dream died. But its passing is commemorated by this podcast, presenting, for the winter months, a series of cozy chats with friends old and new on topics of interest. Welcome to the October Club. Hello, and welcome to a brand new series of the October Club, presenting 7 more cozy chats for the winter months. My name is Paul Ferry, and tonight I'll be joined by actor, writer, and comedian Steve Pallas to discuss that iconic and very strange television series, Twin Peaks.
Warning. This episode contains spoilers.
Hi Steve, welcome to the October Club.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, tonight we're going to be talking about the remarkable television series Twin Peaks, created and occasionally directed by the late David Lynch.
Absolutely, yes. It's there's all sorts of they've been posting details of his house now, haven't they? Because it's all up for sale, and that, as you would imagine, is very much like something from Twin Peaks. There's a lot of sort of jagged lines and sort of things like that. So it's strange to talk about it when he's not here.
Yeah, it's quite sad. I was reading about, I didn't realize at the time that he'd passed away what it was that had caused it, and apparently he'd had emphysema, and it was because of the fires in Los Angeles, the smoke and stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And in a sort of on a Twin Peaks related note, you know, the place was on fire, and they had to evacuate him from his house, and
Yeah.
he died at his daughter's house, I believe. But it was not appropriate, but it was an interesting way, you know, the circumstances leading up to him finally passing away. I wonder what he made of it. But
yeah, Twin Peaks was sort of first released in 1990. Did you watch it when it was first on? You must have been quite young, were you?
I did. I was 13, I think.
Yeah.
And yes, I remember it was on BBC Two.
Yeah.
And I think I had the kind of perfect introduction to it because they've been showing trailers, these sort of rambling trailers with all this sort of different stuff in it, which was kind of reflective of what no one really knew what Twin Peaks was. So they had a trailer, and I think it was just a load of stuff all jumbled together, and you thought, "Oh, what's this?" You know.
Yeah.
And then they released the Radio Times, which had Sherilyn Fenn on the cover. So you saw that, and you thought, "Oh, okay."
Yeah.
And then I went on the night they showed the pilot, the 90-minute, opener.
Yeah.
My parents were all out for the evening, so I thought, well, everyone's banging on about this show. I'll sit down and see what the fuss is about, not really expecting anything. And I got transported to this incredible place, from which I have yet to leave psychologically. So it did have a big impact on me.
That's really strange because I used to watch, it used to be on a Monday night, if I remember correctly, and my parents were always out on a Monday night. So it's just because it's something that I don't think they would have sat down and watched it, but it's something I just used to kind of sit and watch on my own while they were out. So.
Yeah, I think I was the same, and I think my parents came back and said, "Well, how was it?" And I couldn't really explain it to them, so
yeah,
I was still processing it.
Not easy to summarize, really.
So, I mean, what about yourself? Did you watch it from the first?
Yeah, I did.
Night?
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of aware of David Lynch. I knew who he was, so I kind of knew what I was kind of getting in for. Yeah, it was kind of it does kind of suck you in from the beginning.
I mean, it was my introduction to David Lynch. I mean, I was aware of Dune because I had one of the action figures, even though I'd never seen the film. So, and I was aware it was the same lead actor. But yeah, it was my introduction to the whole David Lynch style.
It's a strange thing because we kind of think of it now as a cult series, but it was very sort of mainstream at the time. I remember Kyle MacLachlan being on Wogan, and Wogan
Yeah,
sort
I
of
remember
talking
that.
as if Wogan talking as if he had watched the series, he knew about the series.
Because that reminds me, fun fact, I think Laura Palmer was killed on the 23rd of February, and that's my birthday.
All right.
And the reason I thought of that is because I recall when McLaughlin was on Wogan,
Yeah.
he said to Terry, "Where were you on the night of the 23rd of February?" And I thought, why is he saying that? And it turned out that was the
That
date
was
that it all
the
happened, that the legend was born.
Yeah, because I remember for some reason the thing that sticks out in my head is Wogan mentioning the fish in the coffee percolator, which was a thing from the first episode, and you just you're watching that then and you think, oh yeah, you did watch this. You're not just kind of parroting back notes that you're being given by your researchers. So, yeah, it was.
Yeah, as you say, it just did capture people's imaginations, and
Yeah.
at least for the first series. But we can move on to that, I'm sure.
Well, yeah. I mean, there's seeing about things being on sort of mainstream television. There's also I remember seeing Julie Cruz on Top of the Pops doing the song based on the theme music. So it was kind of very much. I think it quickly got kind of shuffled out the door by the X-Files, and the X-Files became
Yes.
the new thing. But for a short while, I think it was the big thing, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I think, and also it was, I suppose, a relatively short first season, particularly
Yeah,
in terms of TV back then. I would have thought. I think there were 7 episodes, and I think usually they made about 20 odd of something, didn't they?
yeah,
And it was
yeah,
also the time when cinema and TV were more divided, and I guess a lot of people from movies didn't really want to work on TV, and that was the first time I knew of when someone took the production of a TV series as seriously as they would making one of their films. And in his case, he was from the art house circuit, so he insisted on doing it like that. So it was, yeah, and that's what made it special. But in a way, also, I think what I like about the original series is that it was conventional. It was a takeoff of a soap opera, and it had lots of
yeah,
soap opera type stereotype things in
yeah,
it. So and that was a big part of the appeal as well. And it had that the music was really good, but it was kind of like Muzak. It was always going on
yeah,
in the background, like a sort of a daytime soap. And they had the soap within a soap, Invitation to Love, and
yeah.
so. But it took that and just completely twisted it around. So it was a bit conventional as well, and I guess that's what made it accessible to people.
Yeah, I think that's something I didn't get the first time I saw it was the idea that it was kind of visually based on a sort of American daytime soap. And then when I watched it again years later and realized that, like you say, they were using the same quite sort of melodramatic pieces of music again and again, you think, yeah, this is meant to look like a kind of American daytime soap opera. And they've kind of cast it with a lot of kind of sort of beautiful young people. So it does look like daytime soap, and then it descends into something horrible.
Yeah, that was a big part of the appeal as well. You feel quite cozy watching it because that's the other thing I think with the first couple of seasons. They look quite warm, and there's lots of reds and sort of and wood shades and things like
Yeah,
that. And then into the middle of that, they dump that horrendous scene where Bob crawls over the settee
yeah,
just
yeah,
apropos of nothing. Which, of course, as I'm sure you know, that was all accidental. The creation of that character was just kind of made up on the spot, I think, as I
yeah,
recall. It was a set dresser, wasn't
yeah. I mean, Lynch doesn't come across as somebody who sort of tightly plots his stuff. It makes you wonder how much of it was kind of done on the fly, sort of made up as they were going along.
Well, I think there was him and there was his co-creator, Mark
Mark
Frost,
Frost.
who's
Yeah,
kind of easily overlooked. But I think he brought a lot, I think certainly in terms of, the kind of the meat and potatoes or whatever the expression is, probably,
yeah,
characters, I would imagine I mean, I'm speculating, but David Lynch wanted to go and film someone sweeping a floor for 3 hours, and I would imagine Mark Frost was more interested in the more of the building blocks of the story. I mean, as I say, I'm just sort of guessing at that.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, it's and of course they had to work with a writing staff, so it must have been a very interesting, unique, I guess, working environment, certainly on network TV. I was just going to throw in something very quickly. I mean, might be better put later on in the podcast. I don't know, but about what happened at the end of the second season with production wise.
No, I didn't.
Well, what happened was David Lynch. My recollection is that David Lynch wasn't around much during the second season.
Yeah.
Because he I think he'd lost interest for reasons we'll probably get onto. So they had the writing staff had to work and try and do a Lynch, which was virtually impossible. But they'd come up with a whole idea for the end of the season, which was going to be like a sort of trippy sort of thing in the style of, which involved Cooper hallucinating or being transported to a dentist waiting room, and Bob was the dentist, and all this sort of stuff, which sounds a bit conventional. But so they had all that, and this guy just hadn't been around, but he I think he agreed to come back to direct the finale. And so I think pretty much what he did, I'm probably over dramatizing, but pretty much what he did was he said, well, what's this? Oh, we've written the script for the finale. So he took a look at it, put it in the bin, and just made up a load of stuff. And that's why we've got the conclusion that we've got to the classic, whatever you want to call it, series.
Yeah, I think Mark Frost's involvement really, because you kind of look at it a bit and you think, why would a relatively conservative television network like ABC give somebody like David Lynch a television series? His films to that point hadn't been massively successful. Dune had been a bit of a flop. I think Blue Velvet had done better, but it wasn't massively commercial.
Well, I was just going to say, weirdly, that was him going back to his comfort zone, wasn't it? He'd done Dune, the massive disaster, so he made a thing which opens with like an ear being discovered in someone's garden. So he got back to basics, I think. So I think that was more successful, wasn't it?
Yeah, but I think really it was probably Mark Frost's involvement that made ABC go, oh yeah, we'll put money behind this, because he'd been involved in like Hill Street Blues and things like that, and he'd been behind like successful network series. So I think Lynch on his own, they probably would have kind of gone, maybe not.
I think that's probably how it went down, because if you see him work, any clips of him work, I mean, there's a clip of him becoming very irate because someone's told him that it's something along the lines of, well, we've only got like 10 minutes. And his response is pretty much kind of, well, what's the meaning of that? What do you mean we've only got 10 minutes? I hate it when people, and he was really annoyed, so he just, I guess he brained himself in, I guess, for the filming of Twin Peaks, but it would have been very much like an art experiment compared to everything that had gone before.
You can look at Twin Peaks now and compare it to the films he made since then and say it's in a certain style. But it kind of wasn't to that point. I mean, possibly Blue Velvet to an extent, but it's not like The Elephant Man. It's not like Dune. It's not like Eraserhead. It's kind of defines, the type of films he would make more than the films he was making to that point, doesn't it? Really?
Yeah, I hadn't really thought of that before. Yeah, it's quite interesting. And like I say, I probably wouldn't have noticed because, like I say, Twin Peaks was my introduction to David Lynch. So I just associated that with the Lynch style, and everything I saw since I was kind of comparing to Twin Peaks, because Twin Peaks is obviously my favourite thing that he did.
Yeah.
I'm not a David Lynch super fan. I can take or leave some of his stuff. I mean, some of it I like, some of it I'm not fussed about. But yeah, I just assumed that was what he did, and I think working with the Angelo Badalamenti, I think he went on to, I'm not sure if he'd really worked with Lynch before, but I think he certainly went on to collaborate with him. So you associate that with him, but I guess that wasn't really the case before.
Yeah. I really, bizarrely, I was a big fan of The Elephant Man when I was a kid. I was a strange kid, but I kind of Yeah, I love that. And then Dune. When I saw Dune, I thought, oh, that's the guy who directed The Elephant Man. And I kind of being that a little bit older than you, I was aware of story. I'd heard stories that you would probably know that he was considered to direct Return of the Jedi,
Yes, I
uh,
did hear that.
which which would have just been so strange.
I would
Um,
like to have seen that.
I can sort of kind of picture it in my head a bit, and it would be very odd.
It would have been very static because,
Yeah,
I mean, because talking of the Elephant Man, I mean, just to digress briefly,
yeah,
there was that whole business because Anthony Hopkins, who I think was drinking quite a lot of the time, he got very frustrated with David Lynch, didn't he? So he was wandering
yeah,
around. He was wandering around in this big hat, and they wanted to say to him, take your hat off, and start directing the bloody film, will you?" He was sort
yeah,
of carrying, So obviously, it wasn't really a meeting of minds. I think he
yeah,
since maybe adjusted his view and apologised, but. I think it was the era of, I mean, the director. If he felt
yeah,
he felt creatively comfortable while wearing an enormous hat. I guess that was his style back then.
yeah. I mean, I do feel I might be misjudging this a bit, but I think that Twin Peaks, to a degree, sort of did pave the way for Lynch's other films because I think if he'd not made that and just kept making more sort of explicitly art house material, he'd possibly not be as big a director as he eventually became.
Oh, absolutely. And if you look at obviously something like Mulholland Drive, which I
Yeah,
think started out as a Twin Peaks story, they were going to
yeah,
make something about Audrey Horne, and then they converted it into an original story, which was possibly going to be a TV series, and the network didn't go for it, so he had to turn it into an art house film,
yeah,
but which has become another classic of his. But yeah, it was very on edge. I mean, it was, I think he was working on another TV series before his death, but whether that would have come along, because what I understand about the revival series is it was very successful critically, but I'm not sure it had that much of a response from the viewership. And Showtime, who made it, they wanted to make it because they wanted to make it with David Lynch, and it did draw viewers to their platform. But I
yeah,
don't think it was massively successful in the way that Twin Peaks was. That's my opinion, anyway.
yeah. Do you remember that? I can't even remember the name of it, but he and Mark Frost did a comedy series after
Oh yeah,
Twin Peaks. What was it called? Can you
it was
remember?
called On the Air.
That's it. Yeah, I knew it was about a radio station. Yeah.
It was the crazy goings on at the Zablotnik Broadcasting Corporation, and
Yes.
it starred Ian Buchanan, who played Dick Tremaine in Twin Peaks.
Yeah.
And it was just a mixture of sort of slapstick and sort of and slapstick and ambience, which
Yeah.
which was an interesting combination. And I think they didn't show all the episodes, but it's something else that came to BBC Two, and they did show all the episodes.
Yeah. Not that there were a lot of episodes of it. I don't think it ran for very long.
No, I mean, I think that they just had recurring gags like the Hurry Up twins. It was two guys who were conjoined twins who used
Yeah.
to walk along saying "Hurry up"
Yeah.
in sync with each other. It was all stuff. I mean, it did have some quite funny bits in it, but
Yeah.
it didn't come together in the way Twin Peaks did.
Well, there's actually, particularly in the early days, there's a surprising amount of comedy in Twin Peaks, isn't there? We think of it as this grim, rather sort of grim, violent series, but I mean, there is a lot of comedy in it.
There's the bit that makes me think of, and I think that the bit that epitomises that is when they go and see. I think it's the character of Renette Pulaski,
Yeah.
and she's traumatized. She's lying in a hospital bed. I think it's after Laura's been killed. I think they were killed. They were attacked together, and she got away or something. And
Yeah.
it's quite a serious scene. And Cooper and Sheriff Truman arrive at the hospital to talk to her, and they're given a couple of chairs which they have to kind of assemble themselves, and they can't do it. So they spend about 2 minutes working out how to slide, to slide the legs open and stuff like that. And after a while, they're just in the corner, just saying, "Well, I think you've got to pull that bit up and then twist that bit." And
Yeah.
they kind of and they tell, "Sorry about this, Ronette." Kind of, she's just so they used to just insert this stuff which you just didn't expect, the scary stuff and the funny stuff.
Yeah. I mean, of course, he introduced himself into it, David Lynch, as well as an actor. Um, playing this FBI chief who's sort of profoundly deaf, so he's constantly mishearing what everybody else has said. So he kind of gets a lot of comedy into it as well. So
Yeah, I guess that was something he did that in June, didn't he? He had himself as a spice miner or something.
yeah,
He's like, "Well, I'm mining the old spice here," kind of thing. So
yeah,
it was just like very random, but that was more in keeping with his general demeanor. I think that character. So I don't know if it was his idea to cast himself, and possibly it
yeah.
was, but
So do you think? I mean, do you think the fact there's humor in it, does that did that make it more attractive to you as a because you are a comedian?
yeah, I think. I mean, certainly. I mean, Twin Peaks has been the biggest single creative influence I think
Yeah,
that I've ever had, that I've ever watched. So I do think of it sometimes if I'm trying to do something funny, because I mean, you can compare it almost to something like, One Foot in the Grave. It was always the
yeah,
humour just came out of nowhere. They didn't necessarily. They did have a bit planned. They did have an absurd situation, but it was just going to come out of left field, usually in the middle of something harrowing or
yeah,
something like that. So that was quite influential. And the fact that you did, and it contributed to a sense that you just never know what you were going to see. You didn't know whether you were going to be terrified or you were going to be, really laughing your head off,
yeah,
or just in suspense or whatever. So the comedy was certainly, I think, important
yeah.
for that in all sorts of ways.
I mean, strangely, you were saying about it being sort of less successful in its second series when Lynch wasn't around. I think there's less humor in the second series, and it suffers for that because it starts kind of taking itself a bit too seriously.
Yeah, I mean, I think when they entered into that, they had an idea, but it didn't sound like the ideas were very good, and they had problems because the first thing they said was, or I think the big idea they had anyway, was they were going to have a romance between Cooper and Audrey Horne.
Yeah,
Carl McLaughlin immediately said, "Well, Cooper wouldn't have an affair with a schoolgirl," so they were like, "Oh right,
yeah,
well we better come up with something else." And they just didn't really have much. That they were kind of padding it out a bit until Wyndham
yeah,
Earl came in, which was more of a sort of a, I don't know how Twin Peaks that was really. He was like an evil moustache swirling villain. I'm not sure how appropriate that was for Twin Peaks, but it felt a lot more solid than the stuff that they had before.
yeah,
So yeah, I think that was so it did float around, and I guess while they were doing that, they didn't really have time to come up with any jokes, or they just thought they'd make it more serious or something. But
yeah,
I think generally the content wasn't there, so you
yeah.
really felt that. I enjoy the second series, but it does lack something.
Yeah, I think what I've heard, I don't know how true this is, but they were kind of slightly pressured to by the network to reveal who had murdered Laura Palmer. And so eventually they did that, kind of part way through series two. And then it just doesn't flow very nicely, does it? That you kind of got that revelation and then you've kind of got to kick started again with another story. It's not the best way to do it, really.
I think they were given an ultimatum for some reason, and I might be wrong on this,
Yeah.
but they had a massive hit on this series, which was all about a mystery where you were constantly wondering what was going on,
Yeah.
and the network said, "We'll make a second season, but you have to reveal who the killer was." And I
Yeah.
think, as Lynch himself described it, I think he said, it was like killing the goose that laid the golden eggs, and that might have been why he lost interest and he wasn't around so much. Because I think if it was up to
Yeah.
him, it might still be in production now, and we still wouldn't know who did it.
Yeah. Yeah, because I mean it's it's one of those strange choices that television networks seem to occasionally make where you think they don't really understand how this works because the murder the who done it is what's driving it. That's the whole
Yeah,
impetus of the series. So suddenly taking that element out, you're left with a series that you don't know where to go with it. You've got to create a new mystery, which they kind of did. Yeah.
yeah, I'm sure they didn't understand it. I mean, because that note just doesn't make any sense. It just shows a complete lack of a complete lack of knowledge about why the thing was so successful in the first place. At some point, they'd have to reveal it, but probably if they did it in a more sort of gradual way and weaved it
Yeah.
into something else. But as I recall, they revealed it. Then they were treading water for about 10 episodes, and then
Yeah.
I think they were going to take it off altogether. There was a backlash. They had to make a few more episodes.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden, the whole thing with Bob and it all just suddenly kickstarts again. So, oh yeah, yeah. And suddenly an owl flies out of nowhere, and it's like, yeah, because we were doing that, weren't we? Well, we better wrap that up. So it was all a bit,
Yeah.
it's a
Because I
bit
mean,
sudden.
at the start of it, the whole thing of it was who killed Laura Palmer. That was like a meme before there were memes, sort of thing, wasn't it? A bit like
Yeah,
who shot JR. It was that sort of thing. It was in that vein. I'm sure you could probably even get a T-shirt with who killed Laura Palmer on it. But once you take that out of the series, you're a bit stuck, and
yeah. Actually, I remember now. They did the owl when they wrapped up the murder storyline.
yeah,
I think so. They sort of left it on a that was a bit of a cliffhanger. Then they moved on to some other storylines, and
yeah,
then it was quite abrupt. You suddenly had the curtains appearing in the forest, and then Bob's hand coming through.
yeah,
So that was quite eerie actually, but it was suddenly that they could
yeah.
have maybe kept it going through the series, but there you go.
Yeah. I mean,
That's what they
that's
went with.
because they were kind of saying, "Oh well, we're revealing who the killer is. The killer was Leland." And spoilers, by the way. But if you've not watched Twin Peaks, you shouldn't be listening to
Yeah,
this.
yeah, it was a dad, which was a that
Yeah,
was a real head fuck, I think, wasn't it? That's for
but
network TV and the scene where it was revealed as well, where you had Madeline Ferguson. That was very strong stuff. I think even
yeah,
now it's pretty
but
full on.
after that, it kind they kind of tried to make it so yeah, it was her father, but her father was like possessed, and so who was what is the real entity that's kind of possessing him, sort of thing. But once you've kind of, it's not as exciting a sort of who done it that it's a kind of undefinable entity as that it might be a person, is it really? It sort of thing.
No, because I'm also remembering now. I come to think of it, I think before they brought Bob back properly for the finale, they turned Josie Packard into a doorknob, didn't they? And Bob suddenly cropped up, and I think that was the first time we'd seen him in a while. I think, and he suddenly popped up from under the bed.
Yeah,
He's like, well, "I'm still around," It was all sort of a bit like that. So there was that. So I think that's what it was. All of a sudden, it was a bit abrupt, and you were like,
yeah,
"Oh, okay." So again, just that was left hanging.
yeah. It was excellently cast, wasn't it, Twin Peaks? It was an interesting sort of mixture of people that David Lynch had worked with before, and sort of up and coming young actors, and actors from like the 50s and 60s, like Russ Tamblyn and Piper Laurie, people that whose career had maybe kind of taken a bit of a downturn, and then suddenly they're all mixed together in this, but they're also right for the parts.
Yeah, because you had people from old Hollywood, like you say, Russ
Yeah,
Tamblyn and Richard Beamer, who I think were
yeah,
both together in the original West Side Story.
yeah,
So they went with I guess in the way of soap, did they bring back people from, well, like they did with Dynasty and stuff. They got
yeah,
old Hollywood
yeah,
movie stars in to do it, and then obviously you had. I think it was probably the big role for Carl McLachlan because he
yeah,
was seen as David Lynch's alter ego. I think
yeah,
he described himself as Kale or something, Kyle and Dale. So that was his big role, and interestingly, when they revived the show and he came back, I think it really gave his career a boost.
yeah,
And so and putting, he's had a good career, but I think he went up a level coming back and
yeah,
doing Twin Peaks. It's his defining role, and I think he's quite happy with that. But
yeah,
yeah, and just as you say, the younger actors who are sort of some of whom you sort of still see now, and
yeah,
some of
yeah,
whom are sort of just forever associated with those parts. But they all became iconic through their
yeah.
involvement in the show.
Yeah, and Jack Dance, of course, from Eraserhead.
Yeah, I didn't know. Obviously, I saw Twin Peaks before I saw Eraserhead, but
I don't think I've ever seen Jack Dance in anything other than David Lynch's films. So I think he just kept sort of casting his friend and things.
Yeah, I think so. And he was a good because he was like a little terrier, wasn't he? He was. There was all
Yeah,
that line about, yeah, well, I found a fish, just so happened to be in my percolator. He didn't say it like that. That sounds more like David Essex, but you get the idea. He was,
yeah,
I think he always had the same sort of demeanour, didn't he? When he was,
yeah,
yeah, he had a good quality.
yeah. And when he died in a fight outside a donut shop, which seems bizarrely appropriate, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, it would be worth raking over the details of sort of Twin Peaks stars who are no longer with us to see the manner of their death and to see
I mean
who
that
you could connect it to the
that I mean
series.
it's not funny, but I mean it kind of it feels like a kind of scene from a David Lynch movie, doesn't it? Somebody,
Oh yeah.
an elderly man dying in a fight outside a donut shop.
So, Harry, how long you been seeing her?
How did you know?
Body language?
Jeez Louise. Not long, 6 weeks. Andrew died a year and a half ago.
Fellas, don't drink that coffee. You'd never guess. There was a fish in the percolator. Sorry.
We haven't mentioned so far the Red Room and all the strange stuff that seems to be kind of what a lot of people think of when they think of Twin Peaks. That seems to be the iconic image of it. I mean, that all starts off as in like a dream sequence, doesn't it? That Agent Cooper's having, but as it goes on, it's more and more the lines blur between what's a dream and what's actually happening.
Yeah, I can't quite remember whether it was in the pilot. I know it was definitely. I
Yeah,
think it was about episode 3. They brought it in. He went to sleep in his motel room or
yeah,
hotel room rather. And yeah, that's when we first. I think it was about episode 3, but I'm not sure because the pilot's a bit different, isn't it? There are two different versions of
yeah,
it, and I'm not
yeah,
sure whether they inserted it into that. But anyway, I mean, like you said, that's like the calling card of the show.
yeah,
There's that very distinctive looking environment, and then all of a sudden, a little person comes out and starts dancing, and it's like, right, well, this is where we're going with
yeah,
this show, and they've now you've entered the ride. There are no refunds, or whatever the expression is. And it was
yeah,
that was when we really started to see what was going to be happening, and the sort of stuff we might expect to see
yeah.
or not expect to see as the show went on.
I love the way that I would presume originally the plan was that the little chap should kind of do that backwards speaking, and then that would be it. But obviously, it's not sufficiently clear, so I can imagine ABC going, "Can we have subtitles as well on that?" Because it's not always that clear what he's seeing.
No, I mean, and actually, I don't know where that all came from. That going
Yeah,
backwards and then running it the other way. I don't know where they got that idea from. I suppose, well, you don't need to know, do you? I mean, but
yeah,
that was a distinctive part. But yeah, it wasn't entirely distinct. So yeah, some subtitles were needed, I think.
yeah. That seems to be kind of Lynch sort of inserting his more sort of surrealistic stuff into it because it's reasonably straight until you get all that stuff, isn't it? It's a kind of slightly quirky murder mystery.
Because didn't he do the same thing? There was a scene in the film, which I guess we
Yeah,
can talk about,
yeah,
separately.
yeah.
There was a whole long sequence with some characters were having a conversation which just wasn't
Oh
audible.
yeah, there's just
And I
like
think
really
that was
loud
the idea. It was
pounding
going back
music.
and forth.
Yeah,
And so I think maybe some versions have subtitles, some don't. But it was
yeah,
kind of like, put some subtitles on this. What do you think you're playing at? You just hear these very muffled, and I guess that, I think maybe that was the idea. You weren't really supposed to. You were supposed to have an idea of what they were saying. But he did the same thing again with that, didn't he?
I mean, you were mentioning before the end of the series, and both of the two seasons of this have very powerful cliffhangers on the end, even though obviously the second series one is a cliffhanger that doesn't get resolved for 25 years. if it in fact gets resolved then.
No, the first one was it was kind of straightforward in a way,
Yeah,
wasn't it? It
he
was
just
very
gets
just
shot.
shooting, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Very, very dramatic. And then I think the difference between that and where the show went after the second series was it was all a fair amount of it was improvised, and Lynch was
Yeah.
just telling actors to do things. And like I think he said to the actor who played Wyndham O, he said, "Well, in this scene, you just grab the actress's head and say something like, you know, we're going on a fast boat to Honolulu," and then bang her head on the car. And it was also, I think it was a lot more organised at the end.
Yeah. I think the end of season 2, even though I don't know if there was ever any intention of it going to season 3, but that cliffhanger works well that it doesn't go anywhere because it gives it that sort of ending like The Prisoner or Blake Seven, doesn't it? Where it's got a sort of ending where you're just left thinking, what is that? How they're ending it? And it works really well.
Well, I was absolutely amazed when they announced the show was coming back.
Yeah,
Years on, because I just assumed it was just going to carry on. You know, you just use your imagination to try and work out what happened.
yeah,
They did have some ideas for a third season,
yeah, yeah.
and then it was all ditched. I mean, you may know about some of those, but I think there was going to be a time jump, not
Oh,
25
right.
years, but I think they were going to jump
Yeah.
forward. What I remember reading, I'll just outline it briefly. I think
Yeah.
Cooper wasn't going to be an FBI agent anymore. He was going to be running a hardware shop or something.
Right.
They were going to bring Cheryl Lee back
Yeah.
again in a Madeline Ferguson style, only she was going to have a different hair color, and then she was going to be murdered again. I think that was another idea they had.
Yeah.
So I think it was all back of a napkin stuff.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the other thing was because there were repeated references to cream corn, I think, and
Yes.
they were gonna create a planet of cream corn where Bob and Mike had come from, and it was all just fairly harebrained stuff and maybe not
Yeah.
sanctioned by David Lynch. And I think there was an attempt to create a comic book series.
All
I
right.
think it was
Yeah.
very well known artist, I think, like Alex Ross, I think,
Yeah.
who pitched the idea, and he did some concept art, and
Yeah.
Lynch said Lynch was appreciative, but he said he wasn't interested, just wasn't interested in carrying on, and it looked like he just would never would be. So it was just really alarming and
Yeah.
and delightful when we got the news that it was coming back.
Of course, in between then you have the film Fire Walk with Me, which I was surprised when I was doing a little bit of research for this because my memory of it was that there was a gap between the series and the film, but it was literally the year after.
Yeah, that makes sense, I guess. I think the series ended 91 if the film was 92,
Yeah.
wasn't it? So, yeah, they just
Yeah.
went straight into it. And it was so, and it really alienated everyone as well.
Yeah, well, I think people were expecting answers, and they didn't get any. If anything, it just poses more questions.
Well, I still haven't seen the rearranged version. They did the missing pieces version or whatever it was, because he filmed a load of stuff with the because a lot of the Twin Peaks characters weren't in the
Oh,
original
yeah.
film, but he did
Yeah.
film lots of random sequences with them, which he reinstated in
Yeah,
recent
yeah.
years. But I still haven't
Yeah.
seen that, and I think they might have been a bit pretty extraneous,
Yeah.
which is why they were cut out in the first place. But yeah, the film was just an odd decision to just go
Yeah.
back and revisit what had happened, which he kind of knew about, and I think he altered it slightly, and he wasn't really
Yeah.
interested in sticking to the continuity. It looked different, it felt different.
Yeah.
So yeah,
Yeah. I've got to admit, when I first saw it, I wasn't a fan. I found it a bit rambling, and it doesn't really add anything to the story of the.
yeah, I didn't really like it when I first saw it, just because, as you say, you were expecting a continuation or something, which there was a
Yeah.
little bit of continuation, kind of. It referred to things,
Yeah.
it sort of referred to the events of the end of season 2, and I
Yeah.
think they were talking about doing another film, but it was just too it was too out of left field, I think, for them to continue it, which was a shame.
Yeah. And I mean, Mark Frost wasn't involved in that, was he? It was just Lynch. So it's kind of pure Lynch, which is probably a bit.
Yeah, it was him
bit
and
strong
I think a
for,
screenwriter called Robert
most people.
Engels who'd worked on the series. And I think he spilled the beans later on what they might have done if they continued, if they'd made another film or whatever. So yeah, I've obviously taken it with a pinch of salt. I'm not entirely sure if that was the case, but obviously someone can correct us.
So having seen it again recently, I liked it a bit better than when I first saw it, but I don't think it's aged very well. I mean, Lara Flynn Boyle dropped out because of her playing her character because of the nudity and because she thought the women were treated in a misogynistic manner. And looking back on it from a like 2025 perspective, she had a point. You know, the things she was seeing at that time now seem you just listen to them and you think, yeah, you're right, really. So I don't think it has aged as well as the series has.
I think its reputation comes from the fact that it deals with, for want of a better word, incest. Obviously, that was the theme of it, and it's not really what you were expecting.
Yeah.
But it's been highly praised by, I think, survivors of domestic abuse and what have you. So that's its legacy. I think it has a good reputation for that.
Right.
If you were a fan of Twin Peaks, wanting
Yeah.
more of the same, that's just not what you were going to get. And you had things like David Bowie cropping up and celebrity cameos.
Yeah.
Kiefer Sutherland was in it for some reason, and that was a whole. Yeah, of course, they had a whole. They introduced another FBI agent, didn't they?
Yeah.
They had a succession of FBI agents who mysteriously disappeared, played by musicians turned actors. So I think that was Chris Isaac, wasn't it? Played Special Agent Chester Desmond.
Yes, Chris Isaac.
Philip Jeffries, I think, who was the Bowie character who disappeared, and it turned out he turned into a kettle, which you kind of did by this stage. You were like, well, yeah, okay. And then Bowie, he couldn't return because obviously he'd passed on, so they had to get someone doing an impersonation of him. So,
yeah, he was too ill. I mean, I don't think it did very well at the box office, and if I'm going to be honest, I'm going to say it's probably one of his weakest films.
Well, I think it was one of those films that
I
got
don't think it's
an
fantastic,
extended sort of booing, didn't it, at Cannes? It just didn't go down well at all. It was either a standing ovation or like a standing, like an elongated sort of heckle. I don't know, but I don't think it went down very well. Sometimes films do that at Cannes, don't they?
I think as well, as far as the box office goes, I think if he'd left it a bit longer, rather than doing it the year after, it might have done better at the box office. Because I think there's probably that element of like people going, well, I was watching this on TV last year. I'm not going to pay for a cinema ticket to go and see it. If he'd left it like 10 years or something, it might have done.
And also, I think, as I said before, he wasn't interested particularly in following the show. And indeed, the film opens with a TV set being smashed, which was symbolic of how he felt about the story going forward. He wanted to do more of his own thing, which he eventually did with the revival, of course, which Mark Frost was involved in, of course, and was an equal partner in. But it was much more David Lynch, I thought.
Yeah, well, let's talk about that. I mean, that was 2017, so that was 25 years after, as you mentioned earlier, and that was kind of universally sort of well received, and people were eager to see it. And as I was saying before, I think that a lot of that's to do with because sufficient time had passed that people were going, oh, actually, now we'd like to see more Twin Peaks. I mean, it could have been terrible, but it wasn't. I think it was a lot better than the film as a continuation.
Yeah, I mean, I watched the first episodes, and I was thrilled. Really, it was really exciting having it back. And as it went on, it was a bit of a mixed bag. It just had some absolutely extraordinary things in it. But yeah, that was a very special gift to the fans, having that first episode and seeing people pop up and seeing all the sort of familiar things, but also some new things. I tend to think of the revival series as it's like a David Lynch art project with bits of Twin Peaks in it. It's not strictly Twin Peaks as I remember it. It doesn't have the soap opera element, and I think the music's a bit different, but it does have some absolutely eye-popping things in it, things you've never seen before and probably never see again.
I tend to think of it as kind of like several different stories within the world of Twin Peaks, some of which are directly related to Twin Peaks, some of which sort of less so. But I think it was very successful. it was brave of them to go there because they appear to have given him a pretty free rein to do whatever he wanted.
I think what happened was he pulled out at one point, didn't he? I think it was announced as a 9 episode limited series,
Yeah,
and then he left because he felt he wasn't getting the budget that he wanted, something like that. And then he came back, and when he came back, it was suddenly 17 episodes. So I don't know if that was the deal. Well, we'll have you back, but we'll have to double the length, and that's I think why you get these, why you get quite so many segues because there's a fair amount of stuff in it
yeah.
which doesn't go anywhere, and they do resolve some of it, but it just seems to stop. It's a bit peculiar, and then some of it was, was just mind blowing.
He's quite cheeky though, isn't he? And the fact that he brings back Carl McLachlan and then for
Oh yeah,
80% of the
you don't see
stories he's
Cooper
playing a
properly until the
completely
end of the
different character.
series, do you really? Yeah, so yeah, that was quite frustrating, and
Yeah, I think by the time when they brought it back, there was a few, wasn't there, of the original cast had gone. But
well, what was interesting about the revival in that
yeah,
sense was that there were a lot of people they brought back who were either about to go or, I mean,
yeah,
notably the Catherine Coulson, the log lady, who I think was very ill when
yeah.
she filmed her sequences. And yeah, some of them filmed stuff and never lived to see it transmitted, and it was the whole interesting thing of bringing it back a quarter of a century later, which of course was a big part of the original storyline. I'll see you in 25 years. In the
Yeah,
original series, you had a flash forward saying 25 years later with Cooper in the Red Room.
yeah.
So they literally made that a thing, which was nice to watch. But of course, it meant that a lot of the cast were now OAPs, and including and the young cast were all pushing it.
Of course, in the flash forward 25 years, he looks much older than he did in real life 25 years later.
Yeah, he's aged
But
pretty well.
that's the
Yeah.
Hollywood for you, I suppose.
Yeah, they put a load of Vaseline on him, I think, for that as I recall. They just made him look a bit crinkly,
Yeah.
and sort of really works on him. Whereas, yeah, he aged much better in real life.
I mean, I don't know how old he was in Twin Peaks. He can't have been that old.
He was pretty young. I think he was about 30,
Yeah, because he was fairly
maybe
young
younger.
when although he doesn't look it, he's fair. I read somewhere recently that he was younger in Dune than Timothy Chalamet playing the same part years later, and Timothy Chalamet looks like a child, but
Well, that's an extraordinary detail. Yeah, I wouldn't have
yeah,
thought that.
yeah,
But yeah, I mean, you got a lot of bang for your buck. I mean, all that stuff about suddenly doing an origin story for Bob in black and white,
yeah,
linking it to the nuclear tests of the 1950s or whatever.
yeah.
It's yeah. I mean, we didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I mean that it's episode 8, isn't it? It's just extraordinary. I mean, I would say it's the most surreal thing he ever did on film or television, apart from probably Eraserhead. Since then, it's like him going right back to his roots and going, right, I'm gonna just do something that's
I can still see that thing to this day. It was like a sort of half
yeah,
moth, half frog thing crawling around, and then it goes down a girl's gullet, and that was kind of the end of it, wasn't it? After
yeah.
that,
And then that doesn't go anywhere. Yeah. Yeah, I really enjoyed watching it. I mean, for the time that it was on, I was kind of hooked every week that came on. And it was great that they released it like that and not as a lot of streamed series are kind of all at once. It was much better that you got it week on week
yeah. I
because
mean,
that's
you
how it
needed time to
worked.
process it, didn't you?
Um,
Really?
yeah, I can't imagine sitting
No. I
down and
think
watching
you'd
17
be
hours of
going on a
that.
bit
I
of a
think
journey there from probably in with a mental institution. I don't
yes.
know, but
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so I like it because it's Twin Peaks. I mean,
Yeah.
for me, I prefer the original series because it's cozy, it's familiar. But the whole point, I guess, is that it's not
Yeah.
cozy and
Yeah.
familiar, and I associate it with my teenage years and stuff like that. But I mean, hats off to them. They did something new and different with it.
I suppose he was in an awkward position that if he'd gone back to doing something exactly like the original Twin Peaks that have had people going, oh, he's just retreading old ground. He's just doing stuff he's done before. Um, and if he'd gone completely out there, he'd go criticized for that as well. So he's kind of done a kind of mixture of both of them, and it works quite well. But you never really know where it's going to go. Nobody can say it's not unpredictable.
And there's also quite an interesting demarcation with him and Mark Frost, I think, because Mark Frost wrote two books, which were kind of immersive novels, one of which was released in the run-up to the new series, which I read some of, and there's another one that I still haven't read, but you may have them or you know of them.
No, I've never.
Well, the first one is it takes the form of an FBI report compiled by a character at the time was a mystery. Turned out to be Tammy Preston, the Krista Bell character, and she's compiling information on Twin Peaks, which involves taking in the history of the town, which I think was found by Lewis and Clark. So it's a historical look at the town while taking in American history and showing how events in Twin Peaks have shaped American history, like in terms of Project Blue Book. It starts off with Lewis and Clark, goes through stuff like Project Blue Book, and then it starts talking about what happened after season 2. So you kind of find out what happened to certain characters. I didn't read that bit. I've been meaning to go back and read it. This was years ago. It shows my attitude towards reading in general. I kind of got distracted by the things, but then he released another book called The Final Dossier, and I think that goes more into, and it reveals information like, the girl the girl in episode 8 who is taken over by the creature. That's apparently Laura Palmer's mother, and so the infection was with her first, and then it moved on to Leland. But that was the idea there. So Mark Frost wanted to do something, I guess, more of his own. Lynch did all the weird, trippy stuff in the series, co-writing it with Mark Frost, but Mark Frost got to go and do his own version. I think Twin Peaks is how I interpret it. With so they're worth getting, but they're like it's almost like a Twin Peaks annual. There's lots of facsimile documents in it, lots of photos and illustrations. It's billed as a novel. I mean, it's kind of a novel. I wouldn't particularly describe it as a novel, but it's an interesting non-fiction style fiction book.
I did read that they had ideas for a 4th series, but which obviously never came about.
I think in the run-up to David Lynch's death, they were talking about something called Unrecorded Night or something, which I think was a series he was putting together for Netflix, and some people thought that was a Twin Peaks series because certain people from Twin Peaks had posted. It might have been called Wisteria, actually. People were posting the hashtag Wisteria, people like Cole Moffat.
Oh, right.
But I think it may have gone on to be called Unrecorded Night, and that was the projects he was working on, I think, before he died. And that could have been a Twin Peaks series, we don't know.
Do you think there ever would or should be any continuation of it without David Lynch, or do you think that would not work?
I think the second season proved that you couldn't really do it without him.
Yeah.
I mean, there are fan films. I find that very bold. I mean, I think they get good reviews. It does have a very ardent fan base, and it makes sense they make fan films. But I mean, that's a hell of an act to follow. So but in terms of an official continuation, I can't see that happening. But then I didn't see it really continuing after the second season.
No.
But I think Mark Frost has kind of said it wouldn't happen anyway. I'm not sure. It depends who owns it, really.
Do you think that a series like Twin Peaks could be made now, or do you think the landscape of TV has changed too much? I mean, if it was just starting now.
Well, the other thing, of course, is that if you tried to make something like Twin Peaks, it would be compared to Twin Peaks.
Well, that's it. Yeah.
I mean, the other thing it makes me think of course, is there were lots of shows which came about in the wake of Twin Peaks. Northern Exposure, Erie, Indiana. The networks were interested in shows set in small towns in the mountains where weird things are going on. So that all started up. So if you tried to do something like that again, it would just be compared to Twin Peaks. But you can sort of learn something from the way Twin Peaks was produced. I'm trying to think if there are any
Yeah.
semi-improvised TV shows being made at the moment. There probably are some. Probably the streamers have taken a chance with shows where they maybe make up some of the
Yeah.
content. Or
What was that series with the rhino in somebody's kitchen with
Wild Palms.
Wild Palms? Because that was something that at the time they were going, oh, this is the new Twin Peaks, and then it kind of just didn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, I found that quite aggravating. I've thought of rewatching it because I think it's all on YouTube and available from all good stockists.
Yeah.
I don't know what I think about it now because it was more of its own thing. It was based on a graphic novel, I think. It was like a satire of LA. So it wasn't really Twin Peaks, but they thought, well, this is a bit weird. We'll have this. It just all looked a bit put together and weirdly, or not weirdly, James Belushi starred in it and he went on to appear in the third series of Twin Peaks. But it was an attempt to do a Twin Peaks style thing. The music was quite good. I remember.
Yeah.
Who did that? It's the bloke who did Merry Christmas, Mr. Lawrence, wasn't it?
I'm not sure I watched it right to the end. I got a feeling I know I started watching it, but for some reason I think it was one of these things I kind of lost interest in.
I think I was an ardent fan of Twin Peaks, so anything which tried to imitate it, I just would take offence at. All right, so well, I'll watch this, but I don't like it. So I probably did watch it through to the end. I'll just sit there and sort of stare at it.
I'll watch this, but I'll be thinking of Twin Peaks.
Yeah, I just always thought it was a bit cheeky that they were trying to do a Twin Peaks style thing rather than just. It's probably because Twin Peaks had finished. It's like, well, why don't you just make a new Twin Peaks? Or why do we have to put up with Erie, Indiana, or whatever? Northern Exposure's actually. I watched Northern Exposure in recent years. I quite enjoyed it. It's not really very like Twin Peaks. It's just a similar, setup, I suppose. But yeah, that's quite an entertaining program. But very conventional compared to Twin Peaks. But it did have an impact. So yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I think Lost was inspired by Twin Peaks, wasn't it?
Yeah. Lost something else I never watched to the end either.
Yeah, I watched it.
And then
part of it.
I never saw the ending, and then kind of I read somewhere somebody saying, "Oh, the ending of Ashes to Ashes is exactly like the ending of Lost," and thought, "All right, so I know how Lost ends now."
Yeah, it was. I mean, actually, I think they were. It did look like, from what I've read about that show in its later years, which I didn't watch. I think they were just, inventing it on the hoof. Maybe they weren't. Maybe they did have a plan, and then in the end, it concluded with that whole, well, actually, they're all dead. It's like, oh, okay, well, I've never seen that before.
Yeah,
it was all a bit like that. But so it certainly has an impact.
Yeah. I mean, I think something like it could crop up at some times because say what you like about the kind of streaming networks, they do seem occasionally to take risks with things, and sometimes things you would never expect to be really popular end up being really popular. I mean, I don't think anybody would have expected Squid Game, this Korean dubbed series to be like massive, and then it is. So I think something strange like Twin Peaks could happen,
And it's also part of the legacy of the show, I guess. Before Twin Peaks, there wasn't you did have showrunners and things, I think, but you didn't have a real sort of creative mind, which could sort of come up with these crazy ideas in charge and also make it to a very high quality. I think that all probably came from Twin Peaks. So a lot of these shows, albeit lacking the sensibility of David Lynch, but they do have, these sort of strong, they need to get an individual to shepherd it along with a writing team, and it's also, like something you'd see at the cinema. I guess that all came from Twin Peaks.
Yeah, so that seems like a good place to end it. So I'll say thank you for joining me today, Steve.
Thank you very much.
Maybe you can come on again some other time and talk about something else.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of a suitably sort of Lynchian way to sort of round things off. But I'm going to go and have some. I don't have any cherry pie, but I've got some cherry yogurt. I'm going to go and have some damn fine vegan cherry yogurt.
Yeah.
And we'll end things there, I think.
Örnils, Snade Knock, Do si pe sit gnin ro.
I don't know much about art, but I know what I like. And if you like this podcast, join us again next time when I'll be discussing that very subject with artist Georgette Newton. That was The October Club, presented by Paul Ferry, with special guest star Steve Pallas. The theme music was written and performed by Peter Falconer, and the episode was produced and edited by Paul Ferry. This was a Mosaic production.